In a Unix environment, you'd usually have a lot of small programs working with each other. Here, for example, we are reading with cat and then grabbing a specific line from that file, awk for some math, and then set for some string replacement. We can see that each program doesn't actually do a lot of computation, and it's likely that we're spending a decent amount of time in starting up the program. So couldn't we optimize the startup time by moving the binaries from disk, where, for example, when we call cat, instead of loading the binary from /bin/cat, we move all the binaries to ramdisk, for example, to /tmp. We can append that to our path, and when we call cat, it doesn't need to hit the disk. Well, the thing is, the operating system likely already does that. For example, if I do a du in my home directory, well, it's pretty fast, right? If you test this on your system, however, it's likely that it's not going to be this fast, especially when you're using a hard disk, which for my home directory, this is actually using a hard disk. And the reason for that is I've actually warmed up the cache. As startup, I already ran this command. All the metadata was already in memory, and it would only need to check if any change has happened. In the same way, when we call awk, well, first we're going to load the file from disk to memory. The second time we call it, unless the operating system decided to evict the file from RAM, for example, when we don't have a lot of RAM left, or when we haven't used it in a long time, it is likely that it's still in memory, and at worst, instead of having to load the whole file from disk, we only need to check if the file in memory is older than the file that is in disk. If you really want to warm up the cache, I think it is much better to, instead of loading that to TMP, you can do something like opening every file in /bin. So use find, and then redirect that to def null. If you put something like this in your startup script, you'll probably get most of the performance that you want. But again, this only matters for the first time you run the binary.